We view character as something that's almost old school, meaning that we just have it. And since we think we have it, we think everybody else can think we have it. But everybody else thinks just the opposite. They think they have it and no one else has it, or has less than what they have. Character is that inside out element of selling. Who are we? What do we believe? What do we value? What do we stand for? What is our why? What do we want? How do we want to get it? And we overlook this. This comes back to my mammal to mammal thing, is that the other person assumes everyone else is of lower character to them, and we assume that people can see inside us and understand that our character is there, that we sincerely and honestly want to help them. And hopefully we do, because bad business is no business at all. Today I got Christopher Widener on, and he is a monster in the personal development speaking world. He came up with Jim Rome, the Tony Robbins era in the 90s, and has been working in this area of personal development, focusing in on character. And we talk through it. I think you're going to like this. It may seem old school, but it is core. It's overlooked, and people just don't talk about it as much as we should today. Because that inner person, the person that we are building internally, comes through whether we see it or not. And if the assumption is that you do not have character or you have less character, then it is up to us to prove it. And this is part of trust. This is part of bonding, part of becoming a member of our client's tribe, so that they will want to do business with us. They will desire and like to do business with us, and they will view us as one of them instead of it being a transactional. When you're at the transactional level, it is price, availability, and feature function. And that is the death of sales. Before we get into this, make sure you're checking out Co-Video this week. Co-Video is the way to connect with people, see and show who you are. It's all part of character. You get out there and they get to understand who you are as a person. That's why we have people selling to people instead of robots selling to robots. How are those robocalls working? Not too good, huh? That's why we got the government after them. It's not there so that they're hounding us. It's that they're hounding us in an inhumane way. That's what we don't like about it. When your friend calls, you'd love to talk with them. This is part of what I've been trying to teach, is how people buy, how people view products and changes in their life. They see us as a threat. And by putting a video together, they see that you're not a threat. They see that you don't want to steal their food, that you're just a nice person. Covideo.com. Check it out. See the difference. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining us today as a way of getting started. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, 53 years old, live in Scottsdale, just got remarried to a beautiful woman in Florence, Italy this past summer, and so that's great. Professionally, I'm a speaker and an author, sales trainer, leadership trainer. I've written 20 books. I'm due with my 21st book at the end of this month to my publisher, and it's usually all around sales, leadership, motivation, success. I've written one book in particular that I do most of my speaking on called The Art of Influence, and it's about how leaders and salespeople can influence people they lead and sell to. And it's taken me all over the world. I've done 2,500 speeches all around the world to crowds as large as 25,000 people, and 3 million books in print in 13 languages. And it's been a fun life, helping people do their work in life better.
So you're a late bloomer then, huh?
Really a late bloomer, yeah. Well, actually, it's kind of funny. My career really took off in 2002. I was ghostwriting for a guy named John Maxwell, and then I got a call from Jim Rohn, and then shortly after that, I had a television show with Zig, and but I'd been speaking since 1988. Right out of college, I was speaking to youth groups and colleges and junior highs and high schools, because I had a really crazy upbringing. 28 homes, 11 different schools, shipped off to live with relatives twice, started drugs in the 6th grade, made my money growing up betting the ponies at Long Acres Horse Track outside of Seattle. And so I started speaking to youth groups and high schools and such to tell them about how to, get out of the traps of adolescence. And I did that from 88 until like 2002. I sort of migrated to adult kind of speaking in the mid 90s. But then when my career just shot like this, everybody's like, how did you do it so fast? And I'm like, I spent 14 years grinding it out. And then I caught a couple lucky breaks and I was prepared for them. And so very, very rarely do you find anybody that hits it just like, right out of the chute. It's so rare.
Now you've got a kind of a different view on it. You got more of an inside out view on character and integrity. Why do you feel that that's a better way to take it?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of your listeners have probably heard Zig Ziglar talk. I mean, he's the greatest motivational speaker of all time, in my opinion, and certainly, a legend in the industry. And I'll tell you what he says in a moment, but I'll tell you first what most people say. Most people say, I want to have a better sales career. I want to have a better marriage. Or I want to have more money. So they start with the have. What do I want to have? And then they say, tell me what I need to do. Yeah. Right? So I want to have a lot of money, tell me what I need to do. Or I want to have a great sales career, tell me what I need to do. So the equation is do equals have. And that's mostly what people talk about. What Zig talks about, and what I've sort of carried on the tradition with Zig and others, is that there's a precursor to do before you get to have, and that is be. Yeah. So Zig always said it's be, do, have. And the way that works is who you are is sort of like a thermostat, right? Think of it this way. It's why we find so many people that they're broke as a joke and they'll win $3 million in the lottery. 5 years later, they're broke as a joke. Yeah. Because internally it's a poverty mindset. They don't know how to restrain from overspending, the kinds of things that made them broke in the first place, yeah. Right? And so I think that the same is true in anything. Is you have to change the internal, and the internal then generates the external. So thoughts and beliefs create actions, actions produce results. But most of us just say, just tell me what I need to do. The problem is if somebody says, you need to invest $100 a month in order to achieve long-term wealth. The average 22-year-old started putting $100 a month away. He'd have a couple $1 million by the time he retired, right? But if your character problem is that you are an overspender and you're undisciplined, you'll never save the $100. So you may even know exactly what to do. Somebody says, I want to have a great marriage. And they say, okay, cherish your wife. Well, if you're a selfish person and you can't get beyond the selfishness, then you'll never do the actions of cherishing your wife, serving your wife, and you'll never have a great marriage. So that's really where I operate in my book, The Art of Influence. It's sort of a setup. You've probably read the book by Robert Cialdini, Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion.
Several times.
So at the beginning of my speeches, I will set it up this way. I'll say there's a science side of selling, and you know this better than anybody. There's a science side. It's what you do. There's certain techniques. There's certain closes. The double assumptive close, right? Do you want the red one or the blue one? You don't say, do you want it or not? You say, do you want the red one or the blue one, right? That's a technique. And those things are great and they're fine and you ought to learn those things. But then there's also a character side. And the character side is you can learn all the techniques in the world. And if the person doesn't trust you, they're not going to buy from you. And, the classic example would be a used car salesman, right? You come on the lot and they just know everything about the car. They know everything about financing. They're just sharp, sharp, sharp. They use all the right techniques, but there's just something you don't trust. And you say, I'll get back to you. And you don't buy. So they go hand in glove, really. You should have tremendous skills. You should hone your sales skills endlessly, but you can't neglect the character issue.
Yeah, because I've always thought most of the people I talk to, they want to know something. Then they do it, and it doesn't work, so they think it doesn't work.
Right.
And I think character has been overlooked and kind of put away as old school.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. I was going to go buy a car, and my wife said, my first wife was when we were married. She said, buy me any SUV you want. She hated going to the car dealers. And so she said, just get me an SUV. I trust you to get one that'll work for our families when the kids were growing up. And so I narrowed it down to 2 cars. And long story short, the cheaper car, I ended up getting lied to at the dealership on the very last day. I'm the kind of guy that does it for like 2 weeks. I keep going back to the dealer, talking a little more. I drive it again. It was my final day. I was going to buy one or the other. I went to the one first, and they lied to me. They said, the average credit score at our dealership is 805. And I said, you mean 605, right? And he goes, no. The average person who buys from us, and this was a GMC dealer. And I'm like, it's just not true. And then he told me a bunch of other things. And so I left, and I went and bought this Lincoln Navigator. And the guy, the dealer, the general manager of the dealership at the GMC, he called me up and said, hey, I heard you left and blah, blah, blah. What can we do to close the deal? I said, well, you can't do anything. I'm literally driving home in my Navigator. I was driving home from having purchased the Navigator. And I said, here's what happened. You lied. And the guy lied to me, and I told him, he goes, oh, I can't believe he said that. And then he said, Chris, I told him what I do for a living, sales training. He said, can I tell you what my problem is? And I said, what? And this is fascinating, really. He said, 40 years ago, car dealerships were very localized. They were in small towns. There was a car dealer in each small town. And the guy that owned it and the people that sold cars there, their kids went to school with your kids. They went to church with you. And there was a real community sense. So you didn't lie to those people, because if you lied to them, then they'd ostracize you out of the church and out of the school, whatever. He said, I think the closest any of my salespeople lives from our dealership is 30 minutes. And many of them are 45 minutes to an hour. And they only stay here on average 18 months. So he said they can come in and lie to everybody because they're not going to be here. And they don't have to go to school with these people. They don't have to go to church with these people. And he said, and who gets left holding the bag? It's me. And that's a real tragedy, I think, for a lot of sales organizations now.
Yeah, and I think it's missing, and people don't understand that without character, the trust doesn't ooze out. And when you meet somebody of integrity, you kind of sense it. They're showing interest in you. They understand that to communicate with you, I've got to be curious. I've got to have empathy. They have to have the outward mindset around you, and that builds trust. Right. And that is a skill. It's not just the words you say,
right? How
you say them, and the focus that you're putting on the other person.
Well, and we're constantly, I think, particularly in sales, we're constantly put into these moments where we have a decision. Am I going to bend the truth a little bit and make a little bit more money, or I'm going to stay the line and make more money in the long run? What I've always taught people is if you're dishonest and lack integrity, you can make money. You can be successful for a while.
For a short time. Yeah.
So here's the deal, right? If you think about it, let's take the car salesman deal again. If you lie to somebody, oh, this thing gets 100 miles to the gallon, we got a 12-year warranty, just straight up lie to them the whole time, and they're like, oh, where do I sign? You'll sell that car.
Yeah.
But you won't sell their brother a car. You won't sell their mother a car. You won't sell them their second car. And, interestingly enough, I ended up buying 2 more cars in 18 months from that Lincoln dealership. I spent about $160,000 on cars in about 18 months because they told me the truth. The third car I bought was a used PT Cruiser. I was at another dealership, and I thought, I wonder if the Lincolns have an old one. I wonder if the Lincoln dealership has an old one that maybe. So I called them from another dealership, and I talked to the sales guy I knew. I said, you got any old PT Cruisers? He goes, yeah, we got a couple of them. We took it on trade. I said, I'll be right there. Draw the paperwork up. They told me which one. It was the right miles. I said, draw the paperwork up. I literally walked in, signed the paperwork, and took the car home because I just got to that point where I trusted them implicitly on it because they had served me well I bought a Navigator, and then I bought that original MKX. And so then the third car I bought kind of sight unseen.
But, character is also one of those things that everybody thinks they have and questions everyone else's.
Well, so you bring, God, have you heard my speech? Like, this is something I talk about. This is something I talk about all the time, right? This is the problem. So in my seminars, I will ask people, how many of you think we have an integrity problem? And all in America, all the hands go up. Politics, religion, business, there's an integrity problem. Everybody raises their hand. But then I ask a follow-up question, and I'll say, how many of you, speaking of yourself, have little or no integrity? And No one raises their hand.
Oh, of
So,
course.
so then I say, here's the problem. We think there's a giant problem, but I've asked 1,000,000 people that question over the years. Never has anybody raised their hand and said, yep, that's me, no integrity. I lie, cheat, and steal. That's how I make my way in life. And so here's the problem. So I really started digging in deep on that. Why is that? Here's why. When another person does something wrong, we judge their actions. That was wrong. That's a lack of integrity. When we do something wrong, and we all do, we're all put in those positions where we bend the truth, or we do something. We all break our moral code at some point or another. If you're a person of faith, you call it sin. If you're not a person of faith, you call it shortcomings or mistakes, whatever you want to call it. But when we do it, we don't judge our actions. We judge other people's actions. When we do it, we judge our intentions.
Yeah, I didn't
And we
intend
say,
to
well, I
cut
didn't
you
mean
off.
to.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to. I'm a good guy. I didn't mean to. It was a mistake.
I was in a rush. I'm having a bad day.
Exactly, right? And there's the discrepancy and why we don't let anybody else get away with it, but we get away with it ourselves. But here's the problem. The other people are judging our actions because they're looking at us.
Yeah. And how do we go about building our character, reinforcing it, and making sure that it is something that we start with?
Well, I think first of all, and this is what's interesting about our societies. We've become a multicultural society. We've gotten away from shared values and such like that. 100 years ago, everybody agreed on right and wrong, and now hardly anybody agrees on right and wrong. And you can talk to some people, and they'll say, "Oh no, that's not wrong at all. That's not unethical." I mean, it was interesting. I belong to the National Speaker Association, and I posted something the other day, and I just wanted to cause a sort of a discussion. And I said, ghostwriting, ethical or unethical?
Yeah.
And it just went just like that, right? Some people, it's absolutely unethical because it's not that person and they're passing it off as themselves and da-da-da. And other people said, well, as long as it's generally his ideas or her ideas, then the other person does the writing and stuff. There's no shared common agreement even on that. Yeah. Right? Let alone many of the other issues of right or wrong. And some people just don't believe that lying is wrong. And so that's, I think, our biggest challenge. So we have to get back to some shared values. What are the common baseline values? And in the selling industry, I think you have to start with honesty. And I mean, that's just it, honesty. And some people would say, well, I'd rather shade the truth and make the deal because it's not really going to hurt them anyway. And my philosophy is always, I want to be able to look myself in the mirror. So the other day, I run a speakers management company for speakers who want the back end of their business taken care of. And I was talking to a woman the other day. She's sort of an emerging speaker. And after she laid out her business to me, I said, I guess, and I've known the woman for a long time, and I've spoken for some organizations, sales organizations she's been involved in a lot. And I just said, I would love to work with you. You're great. You're a friend. I can't do it because I would be taking too much money and leaving you too little based on where you're at in your gross revenue at this point. And she said, oh, wow, I really appreciate just your forthrightness. I said, but I will tell you this, I will coach you. It's a lot less money. It's 12,500 bucks a year. It's every month. And that would be manageable for you. And I can still give you a lot of the coaching and such that would allow you to build your business, maybe get it to that size where we could do a partnership where you could actually pay me the 20% of your gross revenue. And she was just ecstatic about that and happy to go into a coaching relationship, because I think what she thought was, here's a guy who purposely turned down probably $50,000 a year to take $12,500 a year. It means that I can trust all the stuff he's going to tell me for that year in which I'm in his coaching program. So, and then what happens is as I build her business and get her to the point, then I'll make $100,000 a year running the backside of her business. So the short term usually turns out for a long-term win. And even if it doesn't, you still get to look yourself in the mirror and sleep well at night. And to me, that's my highest value. I want to get to the end of my life. I tell people all the time, Google my name. I'll tell your audience, Google my name, Chris Widener scam, Chris Widener review. You will find nothing after 31 years of being in the business and since 1996 on the internet. So that's 23 years of being on the internet and people having the ability to write bad stuff about me on the internet. You won't find a single thing because I've made it a real, doesn't mean I haven't made mistakes, but it does mean that I've made a real conscious effort to do the right thing in every situation.
Right, because a couple of things. In one case, you could have gotten that business, but she probably wouldn't have. She would have done the math and would have said, it doesn't make sense. And then there's no relationship.
Right.
You showed more interest in her than you did in your own business.
Yeah, and that's the third point of my speech and my book, The Art of Influence, is consider the other person's interests more important than your own.
Yes, that's trust.
Well,
That's what builds
does
trust.
not mean that you don't consider your own interests.
Yeah.
People, I'm not going to be a welcome mat. I'm not telling you to be a welcome mat. I'm just saying that if you will consider the other person's interests more important than your own, then that's what cycles back and creates that trust and that admiration, the loyalty in particular. And it goes back to Zig Ziglar's old quote, you can have anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want out of life. So we as salespeople, we're really servants. We're really saying, what do you want out of this? Yes. Person walks onto a car lot. We're looking for a minivan because we got 3 kids. Well, let me show you the red convertibles we got. They're super hot right now. It's just not going to work, right? Because you're not saying, what can I just think you could sell all sorts of stuff if you just say, what do you need? And they tell you and you say, I'll write it up.
Yeah.
Like, I just think you just sell a ton of stuff.
And what blinds us is our own needs.
Exactly.
And I think that's what the character is building, is that you're here. This is a long-term game. It's not a transaction. And if you focus on a transaction and you don't care if it's good or bad, the bad ones always come back to haunt you.
Well, that's the difference between transactional relationships versus transformational relationships. Yeah. And that goes back to what I said, the general manager of that car dealership is that everything's just transactional because they're only going to be doing those transactions at that dealership for 18 months, as opposed to somebody in the old times back when they were all more localized, they had to be transformational. They had to be relationships that were ongoing and based on shared values and mutual benefit.
And what's your passion now? Clearly, you continue to write and produce content. And there's got to be some fire inside of you to get that out.
Well, a couple of things. I mentioned my speakers management thing, and the first person I brought on board, she does women's empowerment and breaking the glass ceiling and stuff like that. And at one point during our talk about whether she was going to come on board with us or not, she said, Chris, you're like one of the most famous speakers in the world. You're well known. You're doing all that. Why do you want to help me? And I said, no one's ever going to hire me to come in and speak on women's empowerment and breaking the glass ceiling. But if I can help you,
demand for that.
Right? Not a big demand. Let's hire the fat old white guy to come in and tell us what to do. But the fact is if I help you, and you help 100,000 women, I help 100,000 women. And it reminds me of the time Jim Rohn got the Master of Influence Award from the National Speaker Association. I think it was 2007. Mark Sanborn was the president of NSA that year, and he gave Jim. So Jim was sitting directly to my left. We were in round tables, and we were looking back at the audience, and Mark asked an interesting question. And in 2007, I was 41 years old. And so it was still relatively young and working with a legend in the industry. And Mark said to the speakers there, 2,000 speakers, how many of you would say that Jim Rohn has had a significant impact on your life and business? And about 2/3 of the hands went up. And I thought, wow, that's what influence really is. And that's what I talk about, right? And I was writing my book, Art of Influence, back then. And I thought, he's not only touching the lives of people he speaks to, or people who buy his audio programs. He's touching millions of people's lives by touching these 1,500 speakers' lives, let alone countless others who are quoting him just in their little sales meetings and things like that. So it gave me sort of a vision for my life as to how I want to help other people. And one of the ways I can do that is help people in the speaking industry. But my book that I'm writing right now is kind of my book that I love.
Yeah.
I've written 20 books and I like them all. There's one book that I love, and it's truly the one I'm most proud of. It's called The Angel Inside, Michelangelo's Secrets for Following Your Passion and Finding the Work You Love. We sold 120,000 copies self-published, and then Random House bought it, and it premiered at number 2 on the Wall Street Journal, number 7 on the New York Times, and it was number 3 all week long on Amazon. Not number 3 on some sub segment, but number 3 behind the pre-release of Harry Potter and the lost book of J.R.R. Tolkien that his grandson found in his attic after he died. And I thought, if I'm going to be number 3, it may as well be to the greatest fiction series of all time and one of the greatest fiction writers of all time. And that book, it's about a young man who is sort of lost. He's 28. He's trying to figure life out, and he bumps into a little old man in the city of Florence, Italy, on vacation. And the whole book is one half day. And the little old man takes him on a tour of Florence, teaching him life lessons from the life of Michelangelo, and specifically the creation of the David. Yeah. And it's about the angel inside comes from a probably apocryphal story, right, where Michelangelo was hitting on this marble, creating the David, and a little boy walked up to him and said, "Why are you hitting that rock?" And he said, "There's an angel inside, and I'm setting him free." And it's about finding that inner person of power and beauty that lives inside of each one of us and peeling away the layers to get to that real person that can make an impact and live the life that you were designed to live. So that's the book that I love, love, love. Second two would be 12 Pillars that I wrote with Jim Rohn, which is filled with Jim Rohn's philosophies put into a story form. Most of my books are fictionalized, short little parables, kind of like The 1 Minute Manager and, some of Patrick Lencioni's books and such. And then The Art of Influence, I think, is really great for people who, particularly in sales.
Cool. And how do people get in touch with you and follow you?
It's pretty easy. Facebook is Chris Widener Speaker. Instagram is Chris Widener. Twitter, or Chris Widener Speaker. Twitter is Chris Widener. If people are interested in coaching at all, they can go to widenercoaching.com. That explains the process and how we work together and such. And if anybody's in any sort of sales organizations, they're looking for a great speaker. I've done a lot of them over the years, and I love to do them. They're a lot of fun. I keep them fun and funny, but with also some really good strategic points that you can apply right away. And I just love to connect with people.
I hope you enjoyed that. I like talking to Chris, and I like when people really bring down the core elements of personal development, that really developing your character every day, making it a habit and a conscious effort, because we assume that we are an honest, nice, hardworking person, that other people see this, but we have to show them. We have to understand how they view us. So check this out on YouTube as well. I'm putting all my interviews, I'm trying to do as many as I can on video so that you can see the difference, if you want to see the difference, and watch it and get the full facial expressions. I understand. I love audio too. I'm a podcast addict. I listen to them pretty much several hours a day, not just mine. But there's such great content, and it's an easy way to consume it when I'm out running and walking, getting some exercise, and or just hanging out. Frankly, I'm liking it better than TV right now. But there are some times where you just want to crash and turn on the TV. And sometimes I like watching business-oriented stuff. And that's why I'm putting it up on YouTube. I also put up my funny skits. I'm matching my sense of humor with sales. And there's so much to make fun of in sales. Some people call it sarcasm, but it's really just joking around. I don't mean any harm. What I'm trying to do is point out some of the absurdities that I see out there with the over-focus on activity and metrics and CRM versus what really matters in sales is connecting with our clients, getting them interested in our products, getting them to look at them and evaluate them, see if it can really improve their lives. And boom, we've got a sale. Everyone's happy then. That's the real thing that we want to do. Hey, let me update you on the courses. If you're not interested in the courses, you can hit stop right now. If you're in the courses, make sure you're checking out the office hours. They're every other Friday. The schedule's in the first chapter, as well as the Zoom link to drop in. I record them all and put them into the second to the last chapter, called Office Hours, and the very last chapter is called One-on-Ones. If you're a member of the course, you get unlimited one-on-one coaching from me. What is that? It's a 30-minute Zoom call with me, and we apply the course to your world. any situation that you have in your world, you want to talk it through, want to get some feedback. And those are also recorded anonymously, no names, no companies, no customers, and put into the course so that you can listen to other people's one-on-ones. And this is the gold. Why? Because you get to hear other people, what they're going up against, how they're doing it, the typical problems that they face and how they handle it, and coming up with strategies, how to prevent the deals from getting stuck, how to get into any account you want to and start a conversation and get a meeting. If you want to join, go to b2brevenue.com right now, go to training. It's a tab up there. Check out the courses, schedule a call with me, see if it's a match for you. If you schedule a call, don't have to tell me about you. I will have already done my research. I check out your LinkedIn profile, check out your company, see what you're doing, and just tell me what you'd like to accomplish. What are you up against? Would more new warm opportunities help? Or is it you got a bunch of pipeline that just isn't closing? Or it's closing for the minimum amount. You want to close it for bigger deals. That's what it's about. It's a year of helping you. That's what it's about. It's not a scam course. It's like, and if you think it is, please don't sign up because I don't want to deal with any frustration. I want to work with the sales reps that want to invest them in themselves. You know, and they're priced at, one's priced at a good lunch and one's priced at a good dinner. And if that isn't worth it to you, I get it. Move on. But if it is worth it to you and you want to double your income, let's do it. Let's go on this journey together. Let me help you help you. That's what I'm here for. So just sign up and we can get started. You get 100% access to all the content day one. You go through it at your pace. You want to take your time? Take your time. You want to rush through it and binge? Go ahead. Nobody's stopping you. And let's just get some time together. Get your questions answered. We could do an assessment. We could do whatever you want that we think will help you make more money and be successful in sales. That's it. Make sure you're checking out the Sales Questions podcast. Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers. Love that podcast. And the YouTube channel, Maverick Method on YouTube. Follow the company page on LinkedIn, The Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling company page. I post videos on there all day long, funny stuff. Informative stuff, insightful stuff about sales to help you make more money. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Tell a friend today about the brutal truth. And if you see my stuff, give it a little thumbs up. You know, just a little press of the finger there. Maybe a comment, maybe a share, tag a friend that you think will enjoy it. We'll see you next time.